Good evening and welcome to tonight's regularly scheduled board meeting of the Round Lake Area School District Board 116 on February 26, 2024 at 7:18 p.m. If I can get started first with a roll call, please.
Mrs. Klingler?
Here.
Mr. Francisco?
Here.
Mrs. Larson?
Here.
Mr. Jewett?
Here.
Mrs. McGinley?
Here.
Mr. De Vera?
Here.
All right, first up is our Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we need an approval of the meeting agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Ms. Larson, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Roll call, please.
Mr. De Vera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
And with an approved agenda, first up on that is special recognition and presentations. And first up are our January Athletes of the Month.
Good evening, everybody. Mr. Karolzak tonight could not be out. He has an illness and could not attend. It's really cool to see the standing room only tonight. It makes me really proud as principal of Round Lake High School to see that we are honoring this many students tonight. So our first individual that we'll honor tonight, I'm going to bring Miss Molly Henning up to the microphone, and she's going to introduce our January Female Athlete of the Month.
So Judy won our January Athlete of the Month, but she also was our team MVP and won all conference. So I'm just going to kind of talk about her in general, not just January. Although in January she had two 16-point games, which helped us beat Zion and North Chicago down the stretch. But she's been on varsity for all 4 years, which has been really awesome. So she was a part of our conference championship. She started on that team. Last year she took on a bigger role of having to score a little bit more, and this year she has really stepped up and has averaged 9 points the second half of the season, which has helped us out a lot. She had to play point guard at the end of the season, which going against Libertyville, who's playing the super sectional tonight, and having her have to bring the ball up against them was pretty impressive. And she doesn't really want to be point guard anymore, but that's okay. And something else cool that she's been doing since January, just that speaks to her character and everything else, is she started officiating for Junior Panthers. So she's giving back to the community, and it's really nice for those younger girls to see her. And then this past weekend, her and another girl named Haiti both officiated at the Special Olympics as well in Wisconsin. So she's really stepped up both her leadership and just her repertoire of different things that she's able to do now going forward. So she is going to Carroll College probably next year, and we're hoping that maybe she'll play basketball there. But if not, she's going to do really good things in the future. So thank you for 4 great years and a great January.
Okay, we'll continue on with our January Male Athlete of the Month. I'd like to bring up Coach Filas, and he's going to talk about one of our wrestlers.
Yeah, you can hold it down still.
You'd think I've been up here enough times this year to, finally know how to actually operate this thing. Anyways, I want to introduce Grayson Concow. He's no stranger to this award, but honestly, he's had a great career and a great month of January for the Panthers. He is a two-time All-County wrestler. He took third in the county tournament this past year at 126 pounds. He also became a two-time regional champion for us at the end of the month and became an IHSA state qualifier shortly thereafter. Fantastic career, ended with 109 wins, which I think is good for 7th on the all-time list. And I have to put an asterisk next to that because he was part of that unfortunate wrestling class that lost half a year to COVID. So him and Alejandro Cordova, who we've honored before, would be higher on this list if not for that. But honestly, he's been a great leader, and he's just been a fantastic person to have in the wrestling room for us. I think he's, I don't know what his plans are for after high school, but I'm hoping that if he does not go to college, that he's sticking around and he's helping out with our Junior Panther programs and such. So.
Okay, next we're going to talk about our Round Lake Exchange Club Youth of the Month, Sitlali. It's shocking that you were nervous to be there, and the speech that you gave at our Exchange Club meetings was amazing. But this student just demonstrates exactly what grit is. She came to this country in 8th grade, correct? Right? And throughout her course of her time in her academics has showed great determination and consistency in her academics. Actually started in our newcomer program, English classes, and actually skipped through her English classes now and is doing such an amazing job. So without further ado, I'd like to have Sitlali Placencia speak about her time here.
Hi, my name is Itlali Michelle Placencia, but I go by Michelle. I'm a senior at Round Lake High School. I was asked to write about my thoughts on how has the increased emphasis on diversity and inclusion positively impact American youth. I think that people should know about how diversity and inclusion affect others and how important they are to making people feel strong in who they are. 4 years ago, when I just got here, it was difficult for me. I was 12 years old and I lived my whole life in Mexico. It was a big change in my life. When I wrote here, I felt sad because I was close to my family. We were always there to support each other in difficult times. We are a big family of 24 members, and when I just got here, there were only 4 of us. I didn't feel that it was my home. When I started school, I thought that students would be mean to me, and I was nervous because after more than 10 years, I would have to make new friends, and that was scary to me. Even though the first day of school was difficult, the students were nice to me. They helped me with my classes, and also they were making me feel like I was their friends for the past years, even though we were from different countries. When I spoke about what I did in Mexico, I noticed that my classmates and I have different traditions, regardless that we were all from Latin America. For example, Dia de los Muertos is a popular tradition in Mexico. People honor the lives of those who have died, but in Honduras or Salvador, it is just a normal day for them. I know that it can be difficult to learn a different tradition, culture, or the language, but this can help us to learn about difference and even experience new things. We can share each other's traditions and put them into practice. Additionally, I'm thankful to have gotten here and have met my best friend. Her name is Wala. She's always with me. We have been together for the past 4, almost 5 years. She's a person who is always supporting me with my accomplishments. Being in high school has helped me with my English, but most importantly, it has helped me with meeting new people. For 2 years, I was on the team of soccer in the high school, and being there with people who speak English perfectly has helped me to open my eyes and not be scared to try new things, even when I think that it can be impossible for me. This year, I didn't play because I'm involved in the class of Community Civics Honors. This class has been wonderful for me. I have met a lot of nice people. Being more confident in myself has helped me to have more opportunities for my future. Sometimes school can be hard because I have to talk in a different language that I'm still learning, but I know that it's going to be worth it. For the past 4 years that I've been here in the United States, I have learned a lot from other people. Sharing time with Americans and Mexican people, I have noticed that Americans have been celebrating traditions of Mexico, and even my coworkers have been practicing the Spanish, and I'm glad that they get involved in our culture. 4 years ago, I didn't even know what Thanksgiving was. But when I got here, I saw how the people were worried about the food and the present, and even they were worried about what they would be wearing. And I asked my dad, why were they so worried about this holiday? He told me that Thanksgiving was as important to them as Christmas is for us. Meeting different people from other countries has helped me to learn about their tradition and cultures. Having this knowledge and these experiences will benefit me in the future because I have been around different people. Knowing different people from other countries has helped me to try another language and have more opportunities to build relationship with people from other countries and learn more about their cultures. People should get involved more in this topic because they can learn about how people have to be resilient to move to a different country and how they learn a new language and culture. Change can be hard to overcome, but if you fight and learn about what is around you, it can open thousands of doors for your future. Thank you.
Okay, next up for us will be our trainees of the month. So I would like to bring up first, we'll have two tonight that will be honoring. First, I'd like to bring up Andres Rubira. So Andres currently works at Doggy Days Daycare and has done an amazing job working in their staff. He's a self-starter, extremely positive at work with all his employees. He takes care of his areas. He understands the process involved in cleaning up after the dogs. And his current supervisor talks about how great of a job he's done. And it's been tremendously a positive experience for everybody involved there. So tonight we honor Andres. Okay, so I got with me Carlos Carpio, and Carlos currently, right now, he is working at Oak Hill, and he's working in the food prep area right now, and they've actually, and I'm quoting here, that Carlos right now is one of the most trusted individuals in the food prep area. So we're tremendously proud of Carlos. I'm lucky enough to see Carlos every day in school, and I would say he's like the mayor of Round Lake High School. Everybody knows Carlos. He has a ton of energy and tremendously positive, and everybody enjoys interacting with Carlos throughout the day. So tonight we honor I can't talk. We honor Carlos for a trainee of the. Okay, next up, I'd like to bring up Mr. Nick Miller, and he'll be talking about our 2024 Round Lake High School state qualifying chess team.
We've come prepared. Forgive me as I read this. Good evening, everyone. Before we begin, I want to thank you all for recognizing our chess team and for your continued support for us all season. It has meant a great deal. This season, for the third year in a row, the Round Lake High School chess team successfully qualified and played in the IHSA Chess State Championship. After 2 epic days of competition, RLHS walked away with some impressive results both as a team and individually. The team won 3 head-to-head matches, tying our score from last year, our personal best. And we also scored many individual wins. For instance, freshman Eric Garcia, where are you? Achieved a score of 5.5 out of 7, receiving a bronze medal at the IHSA State Championship. I would also like to take the time to introduce the rest of our team, some of which, or most of which are here today, some of which could not be here, but I'll introduce them all. Starting with freshman Javen Guo, sophomores Emily Vargas, Cesar Hernandez, and Martin Arguelles, juniors Logan Potts, Osvaldo Garcia, and Josie Ochoa, and of course our 4 graduating seniors, our team captain, Justin Locke, our top board, Gio Hernandez, as well as Maritza Perez and Brian Guo. We could not be more proud of what this team has accomplished. This came after a full season of trials and tribulations that our students conquered time and time again. One of our greatest victories this season came from the NLCC tournament, where we took home the trophy for first place. While their chess has been played at an incredibly high level, and we were able to show just how strong Round Lake truly is in the scholastic chess world, many of the things that we should be most proud of this team stretches far beyond the game itself. Throughout the season, I have seen each of these students shine through their commitment to their academics, the respect that they show to each of their opponents, and their endless support for one another. I know we are all incredibly proud of this team and their accomplishments, and we take pride in the character and maturity that they have shown, for they have embodied precisely what we all strive to instill in our student body. On behalf of the Round Lake Chess Team, thank you so much again for recognizing their incredible work.
So we'll have one more student that we're going to honor tonight, but before I do that, I just want to say thank you to everybody in this room who makes these opportunities possible, right? Throughout our days, right, we have a lot of difficult work that we engage in, difficult decisions, different conversations, but this tonight is what makes all of it work. So thank you to everybody in the room who is a part of making these types of nights happen and making these great moments for our kids. Thank you. The last person that I want to bring up tonight, I'm going to bring up Mr. Bobby Olson, and he'll be talking about one of our all-state choir students.
So it's my second year that I get to talk about Alfonso. It is his second year making the Honors All-State Choir, which is quite an accomplishment. You have to audition in October, kind of the Lake County area generally, into the District 7 choir, and Alfonso made that along with 4 other friends. From that, they take about the top 5% of students into the Honors All-State Choir. And over 3 days in Peoria, he learned some new music, worked with top-notch directors, and then performed in the Honors All-State concert on January 26th. Or 7th, one of those, the 27th. One of the coolest things for me to see, Alfonso's a junior, and last year he made it as a sophomore, which is pretty unusual. But as a junior, he's taken on some leadership roles and really encouraged guys. And of the 5 guys that made the district choir this year, Alfonso was personally coaching almost all of them, encouraging them to be in choir and do this audition. And because of his leadership, even more kids made the choir. So not only is he sharing his own vocal talent, but he's encouraging his classmates as well. So congratulations to Alfonso.
All right, as always, those recognitions are the best, so thank you all for that. All right, next up we are to communications to the board, and first up on that would be 2024-2025 student proposed fees.
Well, thank you, Mr. Peterson, for trying to keep an audience for me, but it appears that didn't work.
Yep, they ran away with the fees. What's going on here?
We'll leave it to a finance person to clear the room. So it's this time of the year where we start to really look at and project for next year, and with that comes student fees. In the memo that's listed here before you, this conversation occurred at Finance Committee, bringing it forward to the full board for communication and also any direction that you would wish to give me and moving forward towards a final proposal of school fees for the 2024-2025 school year. The background of our fees is listed here, back to ESSER funds and how we had replaced the base fees with ESSER funds that we received. And then also really looking at where we're at moving forward. As I've surveyed and looked at districts within our area, within our conference, we are still one of the lower end districts with fees that are being charged. And so in remaining sensitive to that and also sensitive to our community, we want our children involved. We want them participating in different events, just as you saw here this evening, making that possible. That's why we do what we do. The recommendation that I'm bringing forward at this point in our prelim for next year is to have all of those base fees remain the same. And so what that equates to is at the high school level, the base registration fee would be $170. The middle school fee at the the base level would be $125, and the elementary level would be $95. Any family that would register, not pay in full, not even pay partially, but would register prior to June 15th, there'd be a $25 reduction on each one of those fees. That's a practice we've started, and that seems to be very supportive of our families, moving forward. However, at this point, looking at where our economy is, where our society is, and where other districts are, the user fee on a credit card or an e-check is something that's been moved back to the card holder. And that's where I'm at in terms of that recommendation here this evening, is to remain our flat fees what they are. However, anyone that would choose to, by their choice, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, have that user fee go back to them, and also the transaction fee. So I did give some examples of what some of those fees would be. If you look at the front part of the memo, the e-check processing, if someone were to submit a request for an e-check, that's a direct ACH transfer from their bank to us, that's a 0% transaction fee, but there is a 35-cent per transaction fee. So that is the most economical if someone were to choose to pay an alternate form other than bringing a physical check or cash into a building. If we look at an individual who may choose to use a Visa, MasterCard, or Discover, there are fees that are associated with that. There is a 3.5% what they considered a credit card processing fee, and then there would be a transaction fee on top of that. So at the high school level, if you were to pay your base registration fee of $170, the 3.5% debit credit processing fee plus the transaction fee is $6.30. So that would mean the fee for that family that would choose to pay by that form of payment would be $176.30. At the middle school level, if they chose, again, that debit credit card, their fee would go from $125 to $129.72. And at the elementary level, that $95 base fee would be $98.67 based on the percentage and the transaction fees listed. At finance, the pre-finance committee, the question was brought to me about how much, what do those fees look like? What has the district in the past absorbed? And last year was the first year that we would have had a new company called Payrix coming off of Infinite Campus. They are a Wells Fargo-based financial institution. That fees that the district absorbed by families using either ACH or credit debit card fees, in addition to any kind of return fee, was $15,376.25. The actual Visa, MasterCard Discover fee that was paid out of that was $14,057.90. This year, as we look at the start of the school year, for families that have paid their fees using the payment methods that I've described, that total amount is $5,373.21 that the district has absorbed, and of that $5,373.21, $4,783.31 is the use of a Visa, a MasterCard, and Discover card. We have used the absorption of this payment since my time in being here and even prior to my arrival. And so this is just another aspect of if families choose to use this, rather than passing an increased base fee on to all families, it would be a matter of personal choice, which was what the thinking was from the administration when this was being recommended. Rather than saying we've raised the fees for everyone, it would be if this was your chosen method of payment, this would be a fee. So that concludes the overall brush, the 50,000-foot view with some detail, and certainly would hand it over to the board with any questions that you might have.
Dr. Kibbens, just real quick, we're not asking for approval tonight, right? So it's input from the board. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I know
Ready,
it's
McGinley.
I know it's informational or communication to the board. I just wanted to share, as Dr. Kibbens mentioned, this was at the finance committee earlier this evening. And as you heard her share, one of the questions that we brought forward is, what is that cost that the district absorbs? And we've asked Dr. Kimmons to share that with the entire board so we can, I need to see the numbers. I know I heard them, but I need to see the numbers. So that'll be shared with the board. Another question that we had asked is, so why do we not change our registration fees to accommodate or absorb these fees? And as Dr. Kibbens shared in finance, for those families who don't use credit or debit or those ACH forms that would incur that fee, we don't want to penalize and, cast that cost across the whole district. So maybe I only like to pay with check. I don't want to incur those fees for, maybe Dr. Mendoza likes to use his AMX. So that was me, but, so again, I'm not absorbing a cost for someone's method of preferred payment. So that's why we didn't, Dr. Kibbens' rationale in not changing the base price of those registration fees. And then another question that we had come forward, Mr. DeVera asked, what are we seeing? And then let's just say now everyone wants to pay check, because now we don't want to absorb, I don't want to pay the fees that are associated. How would the district handle that? And I know you spoke to that, Dr. Kibbens.
So what I shared at Finance Committee was we haven't seen a specific time of year where there would be a long line out of building level to pay their fees. We encourage every family with about the 15th of the month. We send out reminder notices via email, and then families would come in and pay their fees. We do not charge late fees. We just ask families to be on some type of a payment plan to have those fees then paid within a reasonable amount of time. We also have procedures in place when dollars are picked up from the building level and taken safely to a location for depositing. But if we did find that there was a significant amount of time, we don't want people waiting in lines, we would certainly adjust and accommodate as needed.
Go ahead, Kevin. Did you want to share the question you asked? No, you're good. So another question Mr. DeVera asked, and you were going to get us some information, was again that the numbers with the building. Again, we'll share that on a Friday, but I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr. Gibbon.
So the notes that I took were reflective of how many parents do pay online right then and there when they would register, how many families would go on and pay online and then would incur that fee. Again, our registration process does not require that. We just ask that they register by June 15th to have that $25 savings, but we'll monitor and look at what that data will tell us and get back to you on that.
So again, there's, Dr. Gibbons did breathe the numbers in regards to, what the district absorbs financially in those forms of payments that a parent or family elects to choose in either registration, sports, any additional fees they incur with their student being here at Round Lake. And then again, what those online registrations look like. I think for Finance Committee, we need to see all that data compiled before we would feel comfortable bringing a recommendation to the board. So let me ask, how soon are you looking for approval, that are you wanting to bring this on the agenda for approval, and knowing that we need some information for finance?
So our registration process is due to open the end of March, so our hope would actually bring it to the next board meeting for approval.
Okay. And you can get us this data how soon? I know you have the numbers as far as what we've absorbed.
2 of the 3 questions I've emailed Miss Bennett so she can put those in the weekly update. The third one is how many are registered online and what's the cost, and I'll do some digging on that starting tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll wait for those to come forward. So that's kind of where that sits. I don't think at this time finance is ready to bring a recommendation to the board.
Right, my only thing that I brought up is just be cognizant of passing that along, just not a blanket thing, so kind of get a little bit more information. Just because other districts do doesn't mean that we should, things like that, so that's what we're kind of looking into.
Yeah, and to echo Mr. DeVera, at least from my personal opinion, it's always been traditionally a cost of doing business. And as Mr. Tavera said, just because everybody else is rushing to pass that along to the consumer, may not necessarily be ultimately our best choice, at least in my humble opinion.
Right, and we did have that discussion, so look, using that, is it 15,376.25 in the grand scheme of our overall budget, and again, knowing the families and the community we serve, what impact is that to us?
Can I ask just, Ms. Larson, Ms. Klingler, or Mr. Jewett, where you guys, I'm just interested in your thinking on, because I don't think the administration feels like, I would say strongly about it. I'm just interested in some feedback from the three of you.
Respectfully, I don't know if it makes as much of a difference to us as it would to them, but I worry about the message it sends, nickel and diamond people. I just worry a little. But I do understand that why we want to do it. Like, I totally get both sides. I just worry a little bit about the perception.
3 years ago, I probably would be a little bit more opposed to it, but I see it everywhere. So I'm not as resistant to it, and I'm irritated by it when I have to do it. So I get it.
So they wore you down, in other words.
Right? Spin the tablet. Yep.
I would say if we do it, we need to put it out there and get ahead of it for our families because, I'm just doing in my head how many of our families have multiple students in possibly different schools, and then you add on tech fees and this fee and that fee, and then they're going to pay this, and then they're going to pay their tech fees, and then all of a sudden a
And then there's a fee
$6
on the tech
add-on.
fee, but the way they pay the tech
A
fee.
$6 add-on is now like a $36 add-on because they've got fees on top of each of the fees that they have to pay at different times. So, just saying.
And Dr. Kivens, just as a reminder, I mean, that's built in on this, but theoretically, if they're paying other fees online the same way, if they're paying their choir fee and their athletics fee and all of that, those would be passed along with that $3 and the percentages and all of that as well. So, to Ms. Larson's point, you're talking maybe it's $6 on the overall registration, but now we're starting to pass those other fees along as well. So when you're paying your $50 here, there's going to be another $3, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that is correct. The percentage would be on the total amount that's there, and then the transaction fee is the 35 cents. It's something just to bring to our, attention, our awareness. If the board chooses not to do that, at least we know we're absorbing those fees, and that's where we're at. But again, rather than put that blanket amount of just raise fees by $10 or by $5, wanted to look at another way to help, offset some of those costs.
And I think if we did it, we'd want to make sure they have everything registered for that choir, for drivers ed up front, so they're not paying their base registration and then I don't know, next semester they're signing up for
Right, and
drivers ed.
to your point, and I'll say that as a parent of a 3-sport athlete, I don't pay all 3 at one time because they're not put in. I pay for the fall sport once they actually get registered for fall. Then in winter I pay again, and then in spring I'll pay again. So I have 3 different transaction fees just by the course of it.
Oh, no, I
No, I know you.
yeah.
And the same goes for AP tests.
Right.
Oh, I know,
Right,
it's
so-
got AP test,
And
and we did
choir.
driver's ed outside, but again, those fees come in at different increments within the school year. So again, I do my base registration and, whatever, all right, we all know I use my AMX, so that's the highest fee we got. And then next semester, they sign up, or that's maybe the semester they decide to do a sport. Now I'm gonna have to pay the fee off the, our sport registration fee, so another fee again. So I understand, again, knowing the community that we serve.
Between the credit card fee or raising the overall fees.
So the recommendation was not to raise fees, to have them be a flat fee, just to give our community again a little bit of a breather. But then again, we're still absorbing those fees. So we're trying to stay at the lower end of where fees are being charged, but we're still absorbing these costs. If something is returned or NSF, we absorb all of those costs as well. So we're just trying to be respectful of both sides and look at that. Certainly could have made a recommendation to increase fees by $10, but then everybody's getting that increase versus it's a choice of individuals. So your information's been very helpful. I think that's good feedback, in moving forward. And we'll get those additional numbers and work with Finance Committee then to firm up a recommendation. Can we still move towards, as we look at the registration process, more of a decision with a recommendation with Finance Committee at the March 11th meeting? Would that still work?
Yeah, I think so. Are you comfortable with that, Mr. DeVera? Yeah, and I understand, just like with any other business, company, district, there's a breaking point where you can keep absorbing these fees. And you have to, at some point, we have to pass them on. It may or may not be right now, but there is gonna be a point for us where we're gonna have to, unfortunately, share that cost with our families.
And if you start raising your fees, it's a percentage, so the fee goes up. That's to state the obvious, but
And if the credit card fee is that baby step in between that to delay that process, then I'm all for that.
However, if we do that and then also raise it later,
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
it's like, I know it's, and again, I do see both sides of this, but it just needs to be pointed out. Yeah, I think this is why Dr. Kim has brought this, to delay the raising of the fees. And the question begs, do we raise the fees later and then remove those fees, or we keep them? When we raise the fees, we look at what it costs for the students, not necessarily associated with the credit card fees. I'm sure there's gonna be a point we're gonna have to raise the fees. Not reflective of just the cost of the fees that we incur for forms of payment. Because then it would be raising the fees along with them having to absorb this. That's why. No, I get what you're saying. The increase of student fees is a separate component of just the fees of the payment, form of payment a family would choose. Now you see why we went long in finance.
All right. Thank you on the student proposed fees, and you've got next up.
Budget assumptions. So this meeting board, you will see budget assumptions for this year. There are some additions to the budget assumption sheet, and then we're also looking at projections for next year. This time I'd like to draw your attention to the memo, and in the memo listed is our fund balance coming out of our comprehensive annual financial report. Dr. Mendoza made a recommendation that I thought was just made a lot of sense in adding that fund balance in, and we've done that the past couple of memos. However, our fiscal 23 audit came through. You had seen it as a board, and so now in this memo session, you'll see where our fund balance is. It has increased. We do have some carryover funds. We do some, again, those investment funds have helped us, and that's where our fund balance is looking at the past 5 years. So as you look at just a focus in on fiscal 24 budget assumptions, some highlights that I'd like to bring to your attention. Line 8, investment income, that has increased to $2,800,000 through the support of the Finance Committee and certainly the Board of Education. We've made some good investments short term to bring some revenue in, and we are on target to yield at least $2,800,000 in interest. That number was under 2 million in previous budget assumption documents. On line 21, you're going to see an expenditure for the old National Bank lease. That is the first time you would have seen that here on this document. That is line 21. That was a $2,823.25 per month. That's the yearly cost that is listed here. However, we do have a prorated cost because we did not occupy the space effective July 1. You also see on line 22, Village of Round Lake Beach lease. That is a new lease that the Board of Education approved at $250 per month. We did begin occupying that space in February, and that agreement goes until June. Originally, that agreement was for conference space, but at time of publication, that's what was listed. However, it is now the home of our HR department there. Line 60, we have the human resources specialist that's listed there as a prorated salary. That individual would not have worked a complete year, so you'll see a salary there that's reflective of the months of employment. In line 69 as well as line 70, the emergency Go Kits and Go Kit supplies, that comes directly out of our RLAS training that we were involved in and also supporting what individuals may need in the classroom. So with those new additions, the fiscal 24 budget positive balance that we're seeing is $1,767,767 and $553 is our budget position with those new items. Are there any questions on the fiscal 24 budget assumptions before we transition to fiscal 25?
Hearing none.
Hearing none, I was going to take those words out. So on the fiscal 25 budget assumption highlights, you're going to see many items. That is because this is the first time that we've brought this document in front of the board. We've got listed the projected change in the tax extension. The Lake County Assessor is working with our tax levy, and we will get finalized numbers in March. Also, line 2, you're going to see evidence-based funding at the state level. We're very conservative. We've listed our new tier money to be below where we received in the past. There's additional funding potential there, but again, being very conservative, we're going to list that at a dollar amount less than what we received in the past. As we look at our investment income, line 8, we're going to have that remain stable of $2,008,000. Looking at line 9, we've got a transfer funds from line fiscal 24 to 25 of $1 million. That's a placeholder for future elementary curriculum adoptions and as well as support on the instructional side. And then in line 10, you're going to see on the revenue side, Preschool for All. That's a combination of two grants, Preschool for All, PFAE is the acronym, as well as Preschool for All, which is PFA. So those dollar amounts are listed in the notes to the right, and that's just a little over $300,000. So then as we look at that revenue piece and putting that as a final number of $13,552,722, we're going to transition into the expenditures. What are those anticipated projected expenditures for fiscal 25? Line 11, increased salary for our district employees. That would be a contractual bargaining requirement. Line 14, change in contractual food service costs. As you know, we're going out to food service bid. We do not know what those numbers would adjust, but we've put a placeholder in there, again, being conservative, what that increase may be. On the insurance end, we anticipate insurance increases not only in healthcare, which is line 15, but in line 18 on the property casualty side. Anticipating some insurance increases there. Line 20, the fiscal 25 transportation lease that was just recently approved at the board table. That is the increase. That is a good number there in terms of a hard number with the last lease versus this lease. Line 21 is the old National Bank lease. If we choose to continue in that location, that is the full year rent lease. Line 22, Village of Round Lake Beach. If we continue to stay there, that is the full year expenditure. And then lines 33 through lines 42 reflect some decreases and increases in positions. Some of those are reflective of ESSER funding that we knew those positions are still very integral to our structure in terms of what we do here. However, the ESSER funding has been removed. This is the last year of our ESSER funding dollar expenditures, so we need to recoup those positions with district funds, which is why you see some increase and decrease of some of the same types of titles. You also see in line 34 a 2.0 FTE decrease in certified administration due to attrition. And then you'll see some increases. For example, when you look at the teaching assistants, there is a 6.0 FTE increase of preschool for all teaching assistants, which is in line 42. That links directly back to our increase in teachers for those classrooms. There is a mandate that there are 2 teaching assistants per classroom. So if we are adding 3 teachers, we need 2 teaching assistants in there as a requirement. So that reflects our staffing and also our position control, which I know Dr. Lamping will be sharing some additional information with you about that. With those anticipated expenditures and projections, we are at a positive budget a summary of $3,146,704.75.
Just a couple of last comments to button this up. I want to thank Dr. Kibbins for the thorough presentation. I'm sure Ms. Negretti-McGinley will cover some of this during the update, but just wanted to call out, compliment the board. If you look at the fund balance number at the beginning of the memo, you've essentially built the fund balance back over the last few years after doing the athletic project. I feel really good about the process we're using to build the budget each year. And then for budget year FY 24-25, I leave myself like 15% wiggle room. We've got most of the requests forward, but just because of timing, I would not expect the team to come with a large list of additional requests for next year. We've got many of them, but just a couple things that are outstanding that I just want to call out. So when they come back, I've kind of floated it out there. We're not done with our secondary scheduling yet or elementary sectioning every year. Once the end of the year annual reviews are done for special education students, we also have kids who take the access test. Every once in a while, we have to come back for mandated positions to account for ratios and special education needs and those types of things. We're also looking at the potential of increasing slots at Tech Campus. That's just, you've seen it, you see what's happening with the pathways and endorsements, and so I'm likely going to be coming back with a rationale for potentially additional slots at Tech Campus. And then one other thing that I'll just call out, there might be a couple more, but we're actually looking at driver's ed at the high school. Many of our kids don't take private driver's ed because of the cost. We have the number of driver's education staff and cars is, we have a massive backlog, and it's really for our kids, is focusing on our kids and how to get them through that a little bit quicker. Those are just some of the high level things that we might be bringing forward. You'll also hear about a sound system through the finance committee, which that's not necessarily an enhancement. It's like a fix, doesn't work. But those are just some high level things that but when we bring those forward, we'll vet it through finance, provide the rationale and all those things. So I'll defer to the rest of the board with questions.
So as Dr. Mendoza mentioned, this was on the finance committee, so we went over this with Dr. Kimmons and Dr. Mendoza. This also ties to an agenda item we had on the finance committee meeting, which was L, which is position control, which ties back to those items that you see through line 33 through line 42. And I know Dr. Kibbins spoke to those as we had asked in finance, such as, again, the 6 FTE preschool teachers with the 3 preschool teachers being added. Again, those 3 are, as you know, we have the addition going on at the EEC. There'll be 3 additional classrooms. We need 3 additional teachers. Each of those teachers get 2 aides. So that's why you see those increases. So again, and Dr. Gibbons covered it very well. And again, as Dr. Mendoza mentioned, our total fund balance, recovering or bouncing back from the athletic fields. As we know, we have more projects up ahead as we've talked about.
And lastly, if the board would respectfully allow us to post positions until the position control memo is brought back for board action, just so we can start building a candidate pool. Because if you look at, early childhood is really, really hard to fill. So that would really help the team. Of course, we wouldn't extend offers or anything until the board took action at the next board meeting.
Yeah, that was the ask from, again, the item for the position control changes memo on the finances. Again, those increases that you see from line 33 to 42, the administration could move forward, but until official approval from the board, but to get that candidate pool. Sounds like that's a yes.
Yeah, I'm not hearing any negative to it.
Thank you, Dr. Gibbons.
Thank you. All right, next up is summer programming 2024. And you brought the summer weather with you.
All right, true. Our summer programming for this coming summer will look pretty similar to what we've done in the past couple of years now coming out of the pandemic. So we will have building-based programs and also community-based programs. Our building-based programs this summer, due to some pretty big change going on in the district, we're going to be housing all of our pre-K through 8th grade summer programs at McGee, and then high school will be at high school. And our elementary programs will be, again, what we've seen before, the kindergarten countdown camp in partnership with United Way. We'll have newcomer programming. We'll have extended school year programming specific for language learners and then students that may have identified needs through their IEPs. And we are going to, again, run our summer theater program that was new last year. So we're excited for that one. At the middle school level, we'll continue with an integrated curriculum that helps the students that had struggled in their core courses at middle school, so they'll get some exposure to what's coming in the upcoming school year and focus on reading and math through science real world problems. Then we move into our high school programming, and again, we will offer that summer honors bridge program for math and English honors students. This year, we are going to attempt to recruit. This was our first school year of offering Math 1 and English 1 at 8th grade for some of our real high flyers. So we want to invite any current 7th graders into this summer bridge program since they'd be taking a high school course in 8th grade. And then also we'll run our credit recovery, but this year we are going to add a couple of English as a second language teachers to credit recovery just for some additional supports for our multilingual students. Then at our transition center, we will be running 2 sections there as well, and we'll continue to focus on horticulture for the program. Our community-based programs this year, again, the EEC will provide summer learning bags for all of their families. We'll continue the art bus. But this year, there's a little bit of a change with the science bus. We're combining our Math Trails program with the science bus, and we're going to call it STEM bus. Reason for that is we did get some feedback last year that families loved the buses, but it was confusing with them going. We were trying to go into all the different neighborhoods, but then they were like, where are we this week? So we are going to centrally locate in one spot. We're going to have art and science, art and STEM there together. We had great turnout, but just again, some of those sites were a little bit shaky. So we're trying to keep those families in, but be a little bit more central in where we're located. And then we will also continue being at the Round Lake Beach Farmers Market, El Mercadito, with our steam tables. So we're excited about that. And all of our summer programming this year, the vast majority of the $252,600 is funded through the after school grant and the ESSER 3 grant. There are a couple of material things we'll buy through teaching and learning, but this is our last year with ESSER. So we'll really have to do some review at the end of this year to kind of see where we're at with district funds to be able to pick up and continue some programming. All right.
I have a question. Because you said you'll do the same location for the buses. Did you say what that location was, or did I miss it?
We have to go through the permit process, but we're thinking of using the Round Lake Beach Park, the lake by the lake. That was a really big hit when I talked to the team, because Christy Cacciatore and Jess Crone were at every single one of the buses, and that was definitely one of the hot spots. And we felt like it was pretty centrally located in the Round Lake community. So that's what we're thinking, but we haven't finalized that yet, because we have to go through, like I said, permit process.
Will parking be an issue for the families being at that beachfront?
It could be. That'll be something that we'll have to look at. Chrissy, if you want to jump to that. Chrissy, can you jump to that mic right there?
It wasn't, because it's also where the El Mercadito was, and they have that expanded parking lot to, I don't know my direction, it's
Yeah, I know what
right,
you're talking
left
about, by
when you
the
face
boat
beach.
launch.
Yeah, so we didn't have any issues with parking. We had a lot of walkers actually that would come to it, or bike riders. So they,
It's the only location for those families on the other side of town. They're not gonna be able to walk or bike. So that's why I'm asking about parking. If we're only gonna use one location, I understand it. It is confusing for the families, like, wait, where are we at this week? But I also wanna make sure that it's also accessible with parking for those families.
yes, because of that extra parking lot. And then they had another part. I remember when I went to the farmers market a few times, they had another parking lot available even farther over past the trees, past the boat launch, that they had marked off with parking spots. So I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue, but if it does become one, we will work to address it and find ways around it.
And hopefully in our communication to families, if that is the venue that we're gonna use, is where they can park. Because those families who don't live in Round Lake Beach and aren't familiar with that lakefront, they're gonna need some guidance and direction on where they can park.
Yeah, for sure. We'll make sure we include any of that information in whatever we send out to parents through the website, or we kind of have a whole communication plan using Dojo and Blackboard, and then the website as well, and social media.
Okay, yeah, but for where they need to park, if it's not their village, they're not familiar with that lakefront. Most are, but not everyone is. They just know that there's that parking lot at the end.
No problem. We'll include that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. And next up, we move to our 2023-2024 Health and Life Safety Inspection results.
So thank you. Each year we go through a annual health life inspection with the ROE. We do so as part of the state law. I'll just go through this. Actually, I can see pretty good up here. So it ensures that our schools are safe and sanitary and fit for occupancy. It was required once a year. It has more frequent inspections at the discretion of the Regional Office of Education and the Regional Superintendent. Luckily, we don't have that. It includes facilities rented or leased by the district and used for school purposes. The regulation is by code. I'll just skip that. It's regulations. You can read that part. So every new facility structure must conform by Part 180 regulations. That also includes our mobiles. Existing facilities may be maintained in compliance with the code that applied to the facility when it was built. This is important because our facilities are by when it was built. So as our new beach wing, now that facility, as we update our facilities, the codes change for us. All equipment, systems, devices, and safeguards must be maintained in good working order. So who, what, where, and when? Pleviac, this year, the RO agreed not to inspect Pleviac due to the district's non-renewal of its lease with Lakeville School District. So the ROE did not go out. RLAS District 116 schools, our inspector was Ed Garver and the fire marshal. Walkthroughs occurred in October. District 116 is responsible to remediate the findings. We usually get 45 days or so or 10 days to put in our how we're going to fix the things that we have wrong. That's a little bit of change. They've updated its system, so now it's more automated than it used to be. When Mark was started as the director, it was actually paper and pencil. We had to send it in. Now they actually have, yeah, believe it or not, he had to write it all out by hand. Now they've actually automated it, so it's about 10 days to put the system in. So pre-site visits, we've really done a good job. We review the health, life, safety check code with the custodians and maintenance. In October walkthroughs, the director of facilities and the assistant superintendent, we walk through. We also coordinated effort by issuing a whole list of things to the principal and the custodian, such as go look for your boiler inspections, make sure they're up to date. If you have an elevator, go make sure the certificate's there. All the things, go into your classrooms, make sure there's no curtains, check your, if you have any soft furniture, make sure there's tags on there, the California tags. Make sure you have 24 inches from anything from the ceiling. Go do all of those things. Then we come through, we tell the principals, go through a week before your inspections, go through with your custodian, do it again. And then Corey and Ted and I go through once more with the principals right before their inspection is set to occur. So we give the principals those timeline and those expectations. And then as a result, we get the field notice. Once we go through, it's about a 3 to 4 day process to get through all of our buildings with the fire marshal and Ed Garver to come through. And then we get these nice sheets of paper. And we're lucky enough to get a number of these that say no violations at this time. So this year we've had 5 sites with no violations. This is down 1. Last year we had 6. The violations that were cited in 2022 inspections, i.e. exterior doors not closing, were not cited this year, which means we didn't have a repeat, which is great. We fixed that problem, which we're very happy about. The type of violations that are now being cited are out of the scope of the school staff, which means they're fixing these things. We aren't seeing the less than 24 inches from the top. We're not seeing they have curtains on the walls. We're not seeing they're filling their, their boards with, papers that are flammable, and they're not having the soft furniture with the no California tags. They're outside of the scope of the school staff. The items that they're putting out there are bigger. They're the boiler room door. Now they want to switch the swing on it to have it be an outswing instead of an inswing. They're higher level types of infractions. They're not visible to students, staff, or visitors to the building. So they're more structural in nature. So they're ramping up the type of infractions. So in EEC, the type of infractions that they've identified is fix the door so latch can be opened with the keys, fix the penetrations in the wall in the air handler room. So when you have a pipe that comes out of the wall, the pipe is smaller than the hole in the wall. We had to fill that up so it completely encapsulates the pipe. You have to look up about 10 feet to find that. Those are the things they're finding right now. Things we should fix, no doubt, no questions about that. But you wouldn't, before they were just looking around this room, no higher than the ceiling here. So they're, it says we're getting better. It really does say we're getting better. So we completed that. Beach, swap out all the exit signs in the new section to battery backup. And add occupancy load sign into our library. We fixed both of those. Ellis, no violations. Indian Hill, no violations. Murphy, no violations. Village, no violations. John T. McGee, no violations this year. Round Lake Middle School, change A204 door swing and fix wall penetrations in the band storage room. Again, the wall penetrations way up high in the ceiling area. The A204 is the room immediately when you walk in past the office. They have walked past that room for probably the past 10 walkthroughs. And now they are saying that door has to be switched. So that's a significant cost to switch that door, we're gonna have to do it. But it's that type of thing that the school staff could not change, even if they wanted to. It's on to the district's, facilities team that has to switch that. Round Lake High School, add a fire extinguisher to the electrical room. We did that the day that they were there, changed the boiler room door swing. Again, that was built that way. Close the electrical junction box. Again, that was probably 15 feet up in the electrical room. Fill openings around pipes in the boiler room and wall openings in the boiler room theater. That was way high up. Lower the exit sign in the cafeteria. We finished that while they were there. Connect the doors to the fire alarm system at the high school. I want to highlight the high school. I know the high school principal is gone. When I started, this list at the high school was probably, I'd say 20 to 25, probably when Mark was here, probably 25 items long. Andy, the high school, has done significant work to lessen that. I mean, we're talking about, what is it, 2, 4, 6 items. So Andy and company has done a great job to get that list significant lower. And again, some of those things there, they couldn't even do anything about those things. So they've done a tremendous job with that. The plan of correction, the district had to submit the plan, we did that. Some of those things are longer term things that we have to work through. A number of those things we did on site and had them done, and we were sending them pictures of the things we fixed. And the ongoing assessment, continue to train and lead the custodians. Custodian staff maintenance will continue to inspect each building prior to the site visit. The added layers of new night facilities, Mr. Chris Bryan will work with the night custodians to conduct inspections of the sites ongoing. And regular informal inspections will be conducted and scheduled with the principals. And reminders. And then hopefully we're gonna try to do some type of celebration, closer towards summer, when we can actually pull all the custodians out and do some type of, probably a luncheon or a cookout. They really like to do a cookout right before, at the end of the year. They really enjoy that, to kind of celebrate their efforts here. So any questions?
What's the impact if we don't change the doors?
I don't know. I mean, it'll continue to be on the list. I think what I'm going to try to do, I think, is employ our architect to really say, first off, do we really, especially the boiler room door, it was built that way. Do we really have to? And if I can give that to them and say, here's what our architect says, they might take it off the list, but I don't know if they really can, fine us. I don't think they can fine us. I don't know if they can really withhold any money from us. I'm not sure. Mr. Varick might have a different opinion. He'll say come up. Heather will say come up to the microphone.
I'm not sure I have that much to.
You need to use the mic because we're being recorded, so the community can hear you.
My answer to that question is that the jurisdictional authority lies with the municipal fire marshal in this district. So if the infraction was listed by the municipality, then if you don't change it, then yes, you would be subject to fine through Donian organization. If it's by the Illinois State Fire Marshal, that creates a quandary because according to the ROE, according to the architect at the ROE, Jason Meyerling, he indicated that, again, municipality overrides Illinois in that area.
And this wasn't the fire marshal that saw these, this was the ROE. So the fire marshal didn't cite these.
Which would indicate that if you did not change it and you had the architect indicate that that was the proper swing on either the boiler room door or on the music room door, then the fire marshal would not find us, if that answers your question.
So this was on the Finance Committee agenda earlier today. And again, I do, and we did have some questions, but I do want to commend and congratulate the schools for the life safety report. Again, in my tenure on the board, I remember it at its absolute worst. So we are light years ahead of where we are, and I really do appreciate the work that Dr. Lamping and the principals and custodians and them are doing in the building. This is really good that they're looking for things now that, you know, as Dr. Lamping mentioned, you really have to look, you know, that 10 feet up into the ceiling to see that. I mean, they're digging now. So again, yeah, so thank you for that. And then again, to have, you know, 5 schools with no violations. I mean, before we had schools with pages of violations. But the question that we had, or I had asked, Finance Committee had asked, was regarding the exit lights for Beach School. We just did that library, that was new construction or remodel. Because it had swap out exit signs in the new section to battery backup. I thought that was done in the new construction, but Dr. Lamping said, I'll let you speak to that, Dr. Lamping.
They, I think they assumed we were, on a generator and they didn't put the battery backup ones, but they did swap those back out.
And there was no cost to the district for that. It was on their dime, correct?
Correct.
I just wanted to highlight that.
Any additional questions? Thank you very much. All right, February 2024 maybe? Strategic plan update?
It's definitely not 2026, so. Just a couple things. A couple of these will be referenced later on, but we continue to make significant progress on the EEC construction project. I want to personally thank Mr. Vierk for his oversight and advocacy. He definitely is representing the district properly. We had students visit the Advanced Technology Center. I'll talk more about that in the superintendent's update. You're also going to hear another big thing tonight with arcade curriculum adoption. And then we continue to, it's been a little challenging, not on our end, but we're really pushing hard to expand dual credit. And, you know, just like a lot of the county high schools, it can be a challenge sometimes working with the college. They're a really good partner, but there's a lot of red tape to cut through. So those areas are referenced in the strategic planning document, but also want to call out that we will be bringing the combined updated strategic plan, which includes portrait of a graduate, associated indicators, the definitions, logos, overarching goals, and action steps. We'll be bringing that to the board for approval at the April meeting. So just wanted to, I mean, there's a lot. We're kind of just cleaning everything up as per our meetings, and that concludes the update for strategic planning.
Thank you, Dr. Mendoza. Any questions for Dr. Mendoza or the team?
You said about the dual credit it didn't have an action step on that after what's next. It just said meetings were concluded.
Let me look. You're talking about F4, correct? That's because the process isn't concluded. We have a series of meetings with them, and I don't want to say too much, but I think there's a difference between, for example, what we have with our core syllabi, measurables, and so in order for us to get dual credit, we need some of those things for the college course we want to teach, and so we're just having regular intermittent meetings with them now to make sure we're moving forward in the way that we want. Jess Crone's done an incredible job with that, so we're lucky to have her. So that's the first of multiple, but we're running into a little bit of just some potholes, some challenges, and it seems to be worked out now. So
I did have a question, because you mentioned bringing forward the strategic plan for approval from the board that we just completed.
yes, yep.
In with those meetings, there were some things still to be kind of tweaked, so to speak. You'll have that prior to bringing for approval for the board to review, or?
100% yes. You'll see it at 2 board meetings.
Okay.
We'll bring the draft version at the first one, and then we'll highlight where the changes were made. For example, we had to move a couple of things, the finance descriptor on fund balance. And so we'll actually highlight what those are, and then we'll ask for any input, and then we'll bring it back for action at the next meeting.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, because I was hoping it would come just forward for action without that review. Okay, thank you.
Exactly what we did last time, correct.
Just
Yep.
wanted to confirm, so thank you.
Any additional questions for Dr. Mendoza or the team in regards to the strategic plan? Hearing none. Any questions for the team in regards to the FOIA report as presented to us? Perfect there. Next up would be contracts under 1,000. Looks like we had one, but it was a $0 contract. Any questions in regards to that? Perfect. All right, next up then is public comment. As always, members of the public may participate in public comment during regular board meetings by attending in person or by submitting an electronic public comment form. Please note that speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and electronic public comments are accepted up until noon on the day of the regularly scheduled meeting. The public commenter will be contacted to confirm identity, and once confirmed, the electronic public comment will be provided to all board members in written form. A link to the electronic public comment form can be found online. We did not have any electronic public comment. We sadly no longer have any public. So hearing no public comment, we will now move to the next, which is the superintendent's report and Dr. Mendoza.
Thank you, Board President Francisco and board members. Round Lake High School hosted the NLCC Buddy Ballers Tournament on February 15th. We had 5 schools from across the conference compete. Everyone had a great time, and the crowd, cheerleaders, and band were amazing. This Friday, March 1st, Round Lake High School Allied Basketball Buddy Ballers will be taking part in the big game assembly at Grays Lake North. We are bringing the team, our mascot, and some spectators to Grays Lake North for a fun game. The assembly starts at 9:25 a.m. Visitors are welcome to attend and will need to check in with a photo ID at the security desk. I'd like to congratulate Dr. Lisa Steffen as she was nominated and recognized on the Branching Minds Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame features exceptional MTSS champions, teachers, MTSS staff members, school and district leaders, and everyone involved who demonstrates unwavering commitment to making a difference in their students' lives. Lisa was nominated by Indian Hill Assistant Principal Katie Carden. Her nomination reads, quote, "Since joining the district as an assistant principal, I've seen an unwavering commitment to teaching and learning from Dr. Steffen that I have not seen anywhere else in over 30 years as an educator. As a district leader, Dr. Steffen made it a priority to evaluate the district's MTSS process while involving stakeholders. She recognized the need for a comprehensive handbook and implementation of Branching Minds to support our teachers by giving them all the information they need to make data-informed decisions about learning paths for individual students. Both have been intentionally planned out with layering training so staff members can learn, implement, and then support coworkers as they join the process. This was no small task, but Dr. Steffen's dedication and enthusiasm, as well as her openness for feedback from those in roles with boots on the ground, has improved learning for all students across the district." End quote. Congratulations, Dr. Steffen. Our facilities team at Round Lake Area School District 116 is proud to recognize Ann Caldwell for being nominated for the Tenant Company's 2023-2024 Custodians Are Key contest. Ann has been a valued employee of District 116 since 2001. She started her career as a teacher's assistant and transitioned to a custodian in 2013. since then and has performed a great service in our facilities in her role as a district custodian. We appreciate Ann's commitment to keeping our district a cleaner, safer, and overall better environment for staff and students to learn in. We are thankful for the many years of service to our district and appreciate all the relationships she has developed and maintained over the years. District 116 has truly benefited from Ann Caldwell being a part of the facilities team. We wish Ann Caldwell all the success in the nomination. Congratulations to Ann Caldwell. On Wednesday, February 14th, 19 Round Lake Project Lead the Way students took part in Lake County's first county-wide METT Manufacturing, Engineering, Tech, and Trades MET Team-Based Challenge event at the College of Lake County's Advanced Technology Center. Students participated in authentic challenges in carpentry, electrical, engineering, and manufacturing. They also toured the Advanced Tech Center. This aligns with CCPE's college and career pathway endorsements and helps us raise our profile in the county as a district that is progressing in the area of CCPEs. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Mendoza. Any questions in regards to the superintendent's report?
I want Katie Carden to write my nomination. That was so.
That was a good one.
Perfect. All right, next up are committee reports. Finance Committee, take it away.
All right, thank you, and good evening, everyone. Finance had a full agenda, so thank you to the families and those students who patiently waited for us to conclude outside. First on the agenda, we had the 2024 Sports Complex Agreement for our allied soccer team. This is kind of a rinse and repeat. We do this contract with the sports complex every year. This assures our allied soccer team have a guaranteed venue, knowing that the weather with spring and our teams here as well at the high school are always fighting for the football/soccer field. So this guarantees those students a venue. And again, just comparing the contract year over year, so that that is complete. That'll come forward. As we head into the spring, end of the school year, prom is in swing. So Mrs. Cacciatore is getting ready for that. And we have the RLHS Prom 2024 A Little Scene contract. This is the little flip book that the students get as a souvenir at prom. And that is supported with student council funds. And again, that contract is similar to last year. And then continuing with prom, it's the Pixter contract. This is that 360 camera where you kind of get up to a little stage and the camera does a 360. Again, just confirming what we had last year. Last year was the first year with this, and continuing on with this year. Making sure that those students, because that little stage can get full of students and they're doing their motions and moves. If one were to trip and there was any damage to the camera, that we are making sure that is insured. And then, of course, bringing in a vendor to the Grand Geneva when we are already their guests, making sure that they are aware that we are bringing in additional guests with this camera. Investment update. You've heard Dr. Kimmon speak to that as we review the budget. But just to, again, highlight, Dr. Kimmons, we've had a $10 million investment with a Treasury bill that actually reached its maturity date. What is the date today? 26, on the 22nd, so just a few days ago. That had a rate of 5.53, so we yielded $268,000 in interest. So again, appreciate Dr. Kibbins making our money work for us. We have another investment of $7.5 million in a Treasury bill that will have a maturity date of March 28th. So that is about a month away. That is at a 5.526 rate, and that will yield us about $205,000 in interest. As we continue to watch the market, Dr. Kibbins, which has done so well, we do have our max safe at State Bank of the Lakes in a money market account. These are liquid funds. This is not a Treasury bill. That gives us a daily average of 5.466. So we are continuing to keep those funds, such as we just received with that first treasury bill, the 10 million that we received back in there, because that is yielding us more than we've seen with the treasury bills. You heard us talk about the student proposed fees. And again, you heard us talk about the fiscal 24-25 budget assumptions, which also led us into the position control recommendations. And then the property tax relief grant. I know that is, we talked about, that is coming up under new business, so I will speak to that when we get there. We also talked about the high school sound system. As you know, that has come forward in regards to the high school sound system. We had 2 quotes. Previously, that Mr. Kozak worked on in getting those quotes. One extremely high, like over $400,000 that we would not entertain. Well, one that's much more reasonable and that we, the administration is asking us to entertain for the high school. We do know, I mean, we've all been to games and choir concerts, and we know that that system does need to be fixed. And how do we add that into the list of projects that we have? So again, that sound system, going with that first quote we had received, I think back in December of last year, has a base of about around $100,000. We had asked when we first went out, or we asked them to go out for quotes, is, you know, what that base system is and where we would like possibly for that system to be with some of the ancillaries onto that to give a full integration between the gym, the theater, and over by the gathering stairs. So the administration would like to move forward with phase 1 with the base, with also that upgrade or the option of integration to those other systems in a phase 2. That does add about $20,000 onto that base, so that if we were to do that, having those expanded components so that we could do that phase 2. Finance Committee asked if supporting that, and we would support it with phase 1, if we were to add that additional $20,000 for that expansion, is that commitment to review for phase 2. Because to add that $20,000 and never come back to visit for phase 2, then why spend the $20,000? And with Mr. Kozak and Dr. Mendoza, again, it'll be part of the annual review process, so we can review and see when that would be. That doesn't guarantee necessarily next year, but again, just making sure, we just don't want that, if we are going to invest that additional $20,000, that it's not something that gets revisited. Any questions on the sound system? Okay. Kind of continue with sound. High school graduation and middle school promotion is again right around the corner. As you know, we contracted with an additional sound company for using the gym. Of course, there's rain dates and stuff involved. Again, it's the same contract that we had last year. Doing that again this year. The only couple questions that we had, we know we had some issues with the high school graduation last year where we had no sound. Those questions have been asked and addressed. They will work on a signal, kind of like we do here for the board meetings with Mr. Francisco. So again, allowing that interim time needed to make sure that it's fully connected so we don't miss speeches. Because I know last year, Dr. Mendoza and part of Mr. Peterson's speeches, while we could see them, we couldn't hear what was happening if you were doing the live stream. Catalyst for Educational Change contract, that will be coming up in new business, as will Remind agreement. We've heard regarding the life safety, and then elementary math curriculum resources is coming up as well. The only other thing under informational items that we had under finance is, as you know, Dr. Kibbins applies for the property tax relief grant. We did not receive it this last go around, bless you. So we had just asked what districts or who had received it. And again, it's nothing that we did, we just apply, and I'm sure they're just trying to spread the wealth. So maybe if we can have that list shared with the rest of the board in the Friday update. Again, we were just curious to see what districts did receive it. And the closest partner or community to Round Lake was Zion Benton.
And just, there is, basically, they have a calculation, and the biggest impact on the property tax relief grant is the tax rate. So, it just so happens that there are other districts, and you know how EAV is fluctuates every year. The districts that, that ended up getting it probably had a worse tax rate than we did. And so the years that we ended up getting it, we had a really high, we still have a fairly high tax rate, because just remember, inverse relationship between EAV and the tax rate. So if property value is going down, the tax rate goes up. The property value goes up, tax rate goes down. So there's some formula somebody at the state uses and that spits out the districts, and we just weren't lucky enough. But I think the board should be really proud, because I think this is the second cycle, each of which is 2 years, and that is probably $14 million of abatement that you've created for the taxpayers over those 2 cycles.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not to say that, you know, again, not getting this award this time around that we would stop. We will keep continuing to apply. And just as Dr. Mendoza mentioned, whoever's making that formula, putting in, you know, that algorithm, we just hope they spit out Round Lake.
There were 155 districts that applied and only 32 were awarded, just to put it in perspective.
So again, we'll share that list, and I would think you would all be curious to know and just to see that as well. And that is it for finance, unless I get a thumbs up. So any questions from Mr. DeVera?
No. I'm sure.
Any additional questions? Thank you for that recap. And let's move to approval of open meeting minutes.
All right, I need a motion to approve the minutes of the February 1st, 2024 special meeting, strategic planning session 4.
So, second. Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mr. Francisco. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the February 5th, 2024 regular board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Abstain.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the February 8th, 2024 special meeting minutes for strategic planning session 5.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Ms. Larson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the consent agenda for the accounts payable report for $1,443,385.89. The previous motions report for $140,911.49. The January 2024 Treasurer's Report, the January 2024 P-Card Report, the February 26, 2024 Employment Report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mr. Tavera. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Motion carries. And that'll bring us to new business. And first up on new business is the Catalyst for Educational Change contract. Wow.
You're nervous, Dr. Epker?
Talk about change.
Well, he is now after Dr. Steffen's trying to take him out.
There you go. So in October of this year, we were notified that 2 of our schools were targeted and 4 of our schools were comprehensive. And in some way, the performance of students with disabilities impacted those designations. So what we would like to do is to complete an objective audit of our special education programming to focus on compliance, quality of programming, and our monitoring and accountability. So as we've reviewed available vendors for this, we looked at the cost, the bandwidth of the organization to complete the audit by the start of the 2024-2025 school year, and we determined that our recommendation is Catalyst for Educational Change. The funding for this would be budgeted to district funds. And once this process is completed, we plan to come back to the board and give a full presentation on the findings and outcomes that are identified.
You keep looking at me, Dr. Apgar. Are you complete or?
Yes, I know that you're going to have some questions, so I'm just waiting.
That's what I assumed because you kept looking at me. So this was also on the Finance Committee agenda. Of course, we had some questions in reviewing the proposal that is attached. It's in the packet. In reviewing that, because I do read all that fun stuff, it talks about our student data and it being shared with this agency, Catalyst for Educational Change. As you know, I'm a proponent of PHI and our data, our employment, our student data, that being shared with those outside our organization. So again, just asking for the integrity of that data that's being shared and how that would be shared with this third party coming in to do this audit or analysis of our SPED program. Dr. Apgar informed that whoever is brought in, they will be given one of our iPads or a device of ours. They'll have randomly selected, is it 50 student IEPs that they'll be able to review and gather that information for the analysis. Again, asking if they're going to have access to that, making sure even though it is on our device, they can't forward that, print it, copy it, that data. It should only be for this purpose. And they have assured that will happen. Nodding yes. So.
Yes, that will happen.
Again, just keeping with the integrity of that data. For our families, for our students. As we talked earlier, there's a lot of bad actors out there. Just don't want to do anything to happen to that data. So that was one question. The other question is, in the selection of catalysts for educational change, and in their selection, what organizations or what schools have used them so that we can get that feedback and what performance with them. And Dr. Apgar had shared Warren Township had used them most recently. And Dr. Mendoza said he himself had reached out to their superintendent. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So they had good feedback. The next question we had was, in moving forward with this analysis, understanding, what has prompted this, next year we are moving from EdSped?
ESPED.
That's close. ESPED to Embrace. Is now the best time, or are they comfortable with moving forward with this analysis, knowing we are changing the platform we're using for student IEPs? And Dr. Apgar informed that he is, correct?
Correct.
Because the input or the tool is changing possibly some of the input or the data we're gathering with our IEPs. Is that correct?
Yes, so we would continue to use the software to build the IEP, but as a result of this audit, what goes into the IEP may change depending upon the feedback that we get.
As you heard Dr. Apgar said, is the analysis that's going to come back from this audit to see, I'm very curious in that data to review and ask questions. That was out of finance. I know that was a lot.
I feel like we co-presented, so I didn't want to steal any of your thunder.
Oh, it's good. It's good. There's a lot of questions. Again, again, for me personally, I'm dealing with PHI every day. I look at it the same way. As a parent, if you're bringing in somebody outside this district to review my student data, the integrity of that data is important to me.
Absolutely. We were talking at the table. We appreciate the questions you ask because it helps us structure our presentations. So,
And I know I always ask a lot.
Additional questions in regards to Catalyst for Educational Change?
I just had one small question. It doesn't totally matter, but I was curious why we didn't go with Hanover when we have a relationship with them.
Hanover is excellent, and we do use them for the research that we do in the district on many, many topics. But as we reviewed the possible vendors, we felt that if we needed any consultation services after the fact, that Catalyst for Educational Change were better equipped to do that for us.
And they're local. They've on-site people. I think, frankly, we can just share this. I think it was a close decision between those two. And CEC has been around for over 20 years, and we're looking forward to getting the data. So,
And I did ask that initially. I did ask why did we not choose Hanover, because we have that existing relationship, because we were kind of informed that they have all this data, right? All this research that we could utilize and pull from. But they did inform that Catalyst would be the best suitor for what we're asking.
The fact that we didn't choose Hanover is not a slight to Hanover, because as we enter any initiative, since we've had access to Hanover, that's the first place we go for research.
Thank you.
We need a motion. All right. With all that, I need a motion to approve entering into a contract with Catalyst for Educational Change to conduct a comprehensive audit of the Round Lake Erie Schools District 116 Special Education Program in the amount of $40,000 budgeted out of district funds.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Larson, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Motion carries. We can tell it's after 9 o'clock. I'm turning into a pumpkin. All right, next up is the Remind Agreement.
Thank you.
So this is we've been talking about this in community engagement for a couple of months. Remind will replace the teacher communication tool that we're currently utilizing with Final Site, formerly Blackboard. So we would be canceling that portion of the agreement with Final Site effective June 30th. And then Secondary would utilize Remind for their two-way communication at the middle school, high school, and then continue to use with their athletics and activities across the district.
So again, this was on the Finance Committee agenda, and as Mrs. Bennett alluded to, sitting with community engagement and finance, we've had the opportunity to ask those questions and review and in that changeover from using what we're currently, what is the best tool for Secondary? So, and I know Mrs. Bennett covered it quite well as well.
And just as clarification, finance is supporting it
Yes.
as well as community relations.
Yes.
Hearing no additional questions?
All right, I need a motion to approve a one-year agreement with Remind in the amount of $14,400 to be budgeted out of the communications budget.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Klingler, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up is elementary math curriculum resources and assessment adoption.
What everyone's been waiting for, I know it. Sorry, Pam.
Hold on, drum roll.
All right. All right. So obviously we're going to talk a lot tonight here about our elementary math curriculum adoption, but also it's important to note we're also here to talk about a new assessment vendor. So I have with me tonight Katie Wishaw. It would definitely not be right if I didn't have her with me. Katie is our math coordinator, and her leadership through this process has been phenomenal, really focusing especially on student achievement, which I know that Eric kind of spoke to a little bit in regards to special education, which we will address. But also paying attention to teacher voice and really being attentive through the whole process to hearing what teachers are saying they need. I do also want to give a quick shout out to Scott Kabelka, the principal at Ellis, and Kai Moshopoulos, the AP at Village. They partnered with Katie and also were a part of leading this process. So it's important I call out the people that did the work. So from there, I gotta flip pages, slides, hold the mic. Whew. All right, that's why I told Katie you can stay over there. If we had to dance, it would not go well. So with the math adoption process, I wanted to point out one of the kind of the steps that got us started on the process. First thing we did was create a survey that was sent out through Dr. Mendoza. He sent it through LUDA so we could learn what other large unit districts were doing, and I sent it through CADCA, which is a curriculum director consortium through the Chicago area to learn what other districts were doing. Dr. Mendoza also put me in contact with a retired District 300 administrator who had been through a lot of curriculum adoptions. So he kind of went through his process to give me some ideas to bring back to our team and Earl leadership to discuss how we wanted to facilitate our process. And through that, we came up with 33. We worked in partnership with Earl to identify who the teachers would be, who the administrators would be that would participate. And it was a total of 33 of us that worked through the process. So to go through the math curriculum adoption process, I'm going to turn it over to Katie, and she'll walk you through kind of from beginning to end what that committee's work looked like. And then we'll come back and talk about the iReady assessment.
All right, so once we got the committee together, we had an initial meeting to really talk about what does the research say about what good math instruction looks like, what are we looking for out of a curriculum vendor. And then we also looked at IAR. We know that's really important for our students in order to be successful. So what do the questions look like and kind of what is the rigor of that? Then as a team, we discussed about what are our non-negotiables when looking at a vendor. So some of the non-negotiables we looked at were that all of the materials that were student-facing are available in Spanish, that the activities for our students were engaging, that the curriculum spiraled not just throughout the year, but then also vertically as well, that there had hands-on activities, it was user-friendly for both our teachers and our students. And then we're going to get into the additional ones in upcoming slides.
Katie or Lisa,
Yeah.
can you just briefly explain to the board what Spiral is?
Oh, yeah.
Curriculum.
Sorry, spiraling, so that the information students receive in a grade level, they see like addition, subtraction throughout the year. It's not just covered in one unit, but that they see it again and again, kind of so that they continue to recognize it, and then again that it's seen at future grade levels. So it's not just covered in one grade level, they're continually exposed to it to kind of build on that knowledge.
Is that also included in other classrooms? So it is, for instance, reading, literature, and science and math and.
So it's interesting you asked that because I would argue in math that like a math skill probably isn't going to be regularly seen in the reading, the science, the social studies, which is why it's so important to teachers that the math curriculum does that because they know they won't get to it. Whereas like reading for information, I'm going to do that in science, I'm going to do that in social studies. So you see those skills in reading come back over and over again in ELA, but you don't necessarily see that in math. So it was a real big priority for the teachers.
So kind of after we heard about that, we had this survey, we narrowed it down to 6 vendors to bring in for the teachers to hear more about. So we looked at Bridges, Carnegie Math, which is what is currently used at the secondary level, iReady, Eureka Math Squared, Illustrative Mathematics, and Into Math. So after our vendor presentations based on teacher rankings, Into Math and iReady were the clear top 2 vendor choices that we then brought in for more information. Ultimately, after our full vendor day review, where the vendors came in, were there to answer questions for our teachers, and our teachers spent a full day really looking at every component that the vendor had to offer, looking at doing some mock lessons with each other, seeing what it would be like to be a teacher, fully teaching a lesson, and also experience it from the student lens. We ultimately landed on iReady Classroom Mathematics as our preferred publisher. So we had our full vendor day review. It was really split between both of the publishers. They both offered a lot of positive things for our teachers to look at. So iReady Math ranked at 49.2% of all of the different components that we looked at, and then Into Math was 50.8%. We looked at 27 different components that the teachers ranked as kind of the things that they really wanted most. Some of those were differentiation. Again, the spiraling curriculum was important to them. And then another component that was really important was that family connection piece, making sure that our families had an opportunity to see how they could support the students at home. We also visited all the buildings and gave teachers an opportunity to look through the curriculum. We offered some Zoom sessions as well for teachers to hop in and learn a little bit more about the curriculum that we were reviewing. And staff dropped in, asked questions, had an opportunity to play on the platform as well. And then since we were kind of split 50-50, we worked with leadership to determine additional factors that we wanted to consider to make that final recommendation.
One thing I want to throw in before I flip this slide there, in regards to what the components were that teachers were rating the resources on, we looked at a variety of different rubrics that exist in different math organizations. So there's NCTM, National Something Teachers of Math Council, I believe. They have a rubric of how to go through and what types of things to look for. There's also Ed Reports that's more generic and not specific to math. So those, when we say the components, we used nationally known resources to help the teachers look for what are the key pieces you want to be thinking of when you're selecting a resource.
So when we were kind of that split, then we looked at some additional considerations. One of the things is the copyright for iReady is 2024, so we are buying their newest edition. And we also, something that's really important is the pacing. So the pacing for iReady fits within our in-person days. So we have 165 in-person days. iReady has 164, and that includes the assessment days for the benchmark assessment that would be given 3 times a year. And it also offers a first week for you to get to know your students and has some get to know you activities before we dive into the actual math curriculum. So within those 165 days, there's some getting to know you activities built in as well. And we shared these results with our staff. And also we looked at, again, going back to that survey that we sent out prior to this, and looked at the feedback that we got from surrounding districts. Wakanda adopted it. They're in their 2nd year now. Their feedback was that it's had an outstanding impact, and they saw it positively. Fox Lake did say that they supplemented with additional resource number corner, and Rockford says it's been really comprehensive, multilingual resources. The parent-family connection is available not just in Spanish, but I want to say 12 other languages. I could be wrong on the exact number, but it does cover a number of additional languages in the parent communications. And then the final thing we wanted to really look at was the IAR scope and sequence. So the bulleted points at the top all go into the main focus areas of the IAR assessment of what's covered. At the bottom there of each grade level, you can see what's covered after the IAR assessment is delivered, and we wanted to make sure that the most important components on IAR were covered in the pacing of the publisher prior to the IAR being given. So all of the main components are covered within iReady, and then there's kind of those additional topics that are covered after IAR.
Just want to remind the board, the IAR is the Illinois Assessment of Readiness. That's the assessment that we take that determines our summative rating. So just want to call that out.
Yep, so then the final selection consideration that was probably, if I'm being biased, the most important to me by far was thinking about our most diverse students and their needs. So when Dr. Apgar was speaking about students with IEPs and their potential learning needs, we also took into consideration the needs from our multilingual students in regards to language acquisition, and then of course any intervention that we may need to consider in purchasing a curriculum intervention resources. So with that in mind, if you take a look at the list here, I want to just call out a couple of real key highlights from the iReady resource. At the bottom of the multilingual list, it talks about differentiated multilingual supports. I've never seen anything like this yet in a curricular resource. I hope this is a sign that it is coming for all vendors. But they, in every single unit, have, in the world of language learning, there are 4 domains that are listed there: speaking, listening, and reading and writing. But then there's 4 proficiency levels. So they actually go through, it's like a grid where they would say, okay, a student who is speaking at a level 1, here's how you differentiate that activity. If a student is speaking at a level 2, here's how you differentiate. I've never seen, I was like, holy cow, heaven for a language teacher. So it was just phenomenal to see something like that, and a really big piece to support multilingual learners. Katie did mention too the language piece. I actually was a total dork today playing around with the language thing. We'll show you a short video here shortly, but they do provide in a lot of different languages. There's a ton in Spanish, but they had things in there in Arabic. I saw Portuguese, a variety of different languages. And under special education, you see something that mirrors also in the multilingual. The math vocabulary supports, but then they also separate out academic vocabulary. So if they're asking kids to analyze, that's an academic ask, because that could be asked in any content area. But if they're saying something like multiply, divide, like key math terms, they call out those in different ways, which will be great, especially in a dual language program when you're trying to do some bridging between language and you want to call it specifically math words versus, school words for the kids. So I thought that was important to call out those 2 examples of what the resource provides. So the last slide here in regards to the curriculum committee is incredibly important because I want to speak to the power of this experience that Katie and I shared this year, because we had K through 12 teachers in the classroom. Well, we weren't in classrooms, in a space. We had our middle school and our high school department chairs join this process, really just as advisors, I guess. I don't know, maybe that's giving them a little too, I don't want to make them sound like their role was any more important than our elementary staff, because the elementary staff is actually the group that rated the resource. The middle school and high school did not, but they were there to answer any questions about, well, what will this look like in middle school? What will it look like in high school? And on our very last day, the elementary teachers, a couple of them, there were 2 different things they brought up where they specifically said, how are we going to make sure that our teachers follow this resource, use this resource with fidelity? It's going to be really hard. It's going to be asking them to teach math in new ways, but we won't do well if we don't all dive in and go after this. And the middle and high school just jumped right in on that, and they were like, it's, encouraging them that it needs to be you guys, because if we end up not following, or there's a teacher here or there or a pocket, we're really going to see the impact as students roll up to middle school and high school.
And it was very neat as an administrator to see teachers having this dialogue about raising the bar, holding the expectations high, and at the same time being very encouraging, like this is going to be great. It was just really neat for us to see that it was certainly not us, the administrators in the room, giving them the, you can do it. It was them really pushing that forward, and it was neat to see that benefit of having K-12 in the same space. It's important to note the little star there. This was actually a question that was brought up through finance. And Katie mentioned as well, our secondary schools right now use the Carnegie Learning Program, and they have one more year on that contract. So next year, we will be going through this same curriculum adoption process with our secondary math departments and looking at 6 through 12 vendors. The middle school will have a tricky decision to make. Do we go in the path of elementary because iReady does not go up to high school, or do they go whichever path the high school will choose? So Katie will have the fun of navigating that with the poor middle school in the middle of it, but I wanted to call out that there will also then be a transition for the secondary staff as well. So at this point, I want to just pause to see if there's any questions on the math curriculum, because I'm going to transition into the iReady assessment and the resources that come with that.
Hearing none.
All right, then I'll keep going. All right, so with the iReady assessment, we've included in the recommendation that we would be moving away from NWEA MAP and to the iReady assessment for reading and math for our local benchmark assessment. And this process actually was started by Dr. Rowling last school year. He formed a committee of a variety of different administrators across buildings and teaching and learning to discuss if we wanted to consider. It wasn't that we have to, it was should we consider. There's a lot more vendors on the market, should we consider others? So they reviewed iReady, STAR, FastBridge, oh gosh, who am I forgetting? And MAP, which we already had. So they looked at those vendors. Vendors came in, did presentations, and they landed on moving to iReady. This was before we had talked about the iReady math curriculum. So he had moved in that direction of then making the recommendation. It was very close to the end of the school year last year when he had wrapped up the process, so we chose to just hold for a year. But the factors that led to wanting to move to the iReady assessment are listed there. We felt there was a very strong alignment to state standards as aligned to the IAR, Illinois Assessment of Readiness, in types of questions, and the tools the kids have to navigate on the iPad were very similar between those two assessments. There's a large array of use for the data analysis and different reporting. The key piece that we really like that has been a big ask of teachers is additional resources that are specifically aligned to the assessment, but then also an individualized learning pathway. The final key piece here is there's been a lot of traction in Springfield in regards to dyslexia requirements and legislation that may lead us to being required to have a dyslexia screener. It has not passed yet in Springfield, but we want to be prepared because it keeps coming back. And they do provide that as well in iReady. So it's just another feature that we felt would be helpful. So at this point, there is a short, I think it's about a 4-minute video that speaks to the iReady individual. Well, it really speaks to the package, but it's going to show you what a parent, it's in their parent engagement section of their website, and it speaks to the kind of what it looks like on a user face. So I'll let the video do the talking, but I think it'll be helpful to kind of explain.
For reading and mathematics that will help determine your students' needs, personalize their learning, and monitor progress throughout the school year. In this video, we will learn what is iReady personalized instruction, what can I see on the student dashboard, how can I view my student's progress, and how do I support my student. iReady personalized instruction provides students with lessons based on their individual skill level and needs, so they can learn at a pace that is just right for them. These lessons are fun and interactive to keep your student engaged as they learn. Your student's dashboard may have a single choice of working on teacher-assigned lessons or two choices of working on teacher-assigned lessons or My Path. Your student can pick math or reading lessons. On the bottom of the dashboard, your student will have different choices: To Do, My Progress, My Stuff, and for math, Learning Games. To Do. Click here to see your students' lessons and assignments. My Progress. You will see stats for your student here. We'll come back to this in just a minute. My Stuff. For grades K through 2, your student can pick buddies, background themes, and play games with coins earned. For grades 3 and up, My Stuff will include background themes and rewards options. Learning Games. These are games to help your student improve his or her math skills. Your student can play learning games when he or she finishes lessons. Learning games are available for grades K through 8. On your student's dashboard, click on My Progress. Time on Task tells you how many minutes your student has spent on lessons this week. Lessons Passed tells you how many lessons your student has passed this school year. Lesson Streak tells you how many lessons your student has passed in a row. And Completed Work shows you your student's past work. Finally, how to support your student. Explain to your student how working on iReady will help them continue their learning while they're away from school. Thank them and their teachers for coming back and help ensure that they are ready for their next grade level. Make a plan together with your student on how they're at home and when they will work on their learning activities. Encourage your student to take each lesson and quiz question seriously. Track and discuss progress. Regularly review progress with your student using the My Progress page. Ask your student's teacher for guidance on how many minutes they should spend on lessons each week, as schools have discretion on what they assign. Celebrate your student's progress. Celebrating milestones such as passing a lesson or reaching a specific goal can help keep your student motivated. Follow your teacher's guidance. As you plan how your student will spend their learning time, your student's teacher is your best resource for ensuring there is a variety in the activities they work on beyond the time they spend on the online learning. For more family resources, please visit our Family Center at iReadyCentral.com/Family Center. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and thanks for being a part of our iReady family.
So I hope that gives you kind of an overview, at least from like what will the iPad look like, what will the platform look like, and what is available for me as a parent. I will tell you that the family center that they referenced, I mentioned, I was playing around. The video is also in Spanish. When they did the other languages, they have the subtitles in the other languages, but it's in English. But the two documents that I passed around to everybody, they did have fully translated in a wide variety, like Katie mentioned, 12 or so different languages. But there's way more for families. This was a big thing the teachers were looking for, was a family connection. We know that teaching math now, we always say like the new math, right? Gets tricky for families. So there were a lot of pieces I liked, just like the fridge tips of things you can do as a parent, and then pretty quick, it's 3 pages. What is iReady? There's lots of resources like this, so we will have to dive in to see how we would share more with families if the board were to approve this recommendation. So let's move into what does this cost? So this is going to be a breakdown of the curriculum as well as the assessment. So on this page, you will see these are the yearly reoccurring costs that we would have to support iReady as an assessment as well as the curriculum. So in the board packet, there are 4 different quotes that are listed. The reason there are 4 is to get the best price possible. They requested at iReady that we bundle the math assessment with the math curriculum K-5. So that is the larger quote you see for $188,703. Then there is also a quote for math assessment alone for middle school, 6 through 8, and that is $33,764. And then there's an additional quote that covers K-8 reading assessment and resources, so that's $74,036.64. The fourth quote shows $0. That's because Dr. Kibbins, although I was kind of giving her a hard time, she's a rock star at negotiating, way better than I could be, and has earned us a $15,000 discount on the math curriculum and also 2 additional free PD sessions that we'll be able to use for staff next year. So I thought it was important to note that that was no cost to us, but additional support. On this slide, you'll also see on the subtraction side, what are the pieces that we're taking out of our toolbox? You could say from a teaching and learning perspective, so the NWEA map, we know that we will not be moving forward with that, so that would come off the table as a cost. Freckle and Dreambox are both individualized learning platforms for elementary math. We won't need those because we'll have the iReady learning platform. And then RLAS Kids is actually a reading resource that we brought on during COVID and we paid for with ESSER funds. Dreambox was actually also ESSER funds. As just additional digital resources for kids and families during COVID, we've continued it because we still have ESSER funds, but moving into next year, we will not. And we will be coming in March with an English language arts and Spanish language arts adoption. So we do not see RLAS Kids as being a needed resource. So there's a little bit of cost savings there as well in thinking about what are the curriculum resources that we will be using moving forward.
And just to remind the board, the costs you see up here, those have been reflected in the 24-25 budget assumptions. We've accounted for them.
So then additional cost on this slide outlines what are those like one-time launch costs, and they cover things like our teacher editions and then also the curriculum the professional development for the curriculum as well as professional development for the assessment. We want to spend some time with teachers and definitely also administrators in understanding iReady reports and how do we use them and how do we make decisions moving forward. So there'll have to be some PD on understanding the assessment and then also obviously support for teachers with a new curriculum. So that covers the cost side of this recommendation. Then what I just wanted to give a real brief kind of how are we implementing this, how are we launching it all. So we have 3 school improvement days, so they will be packed, finishing up the school year. And in March, we'll be looking to do some professional development on the iReady assessment and the Branching Minds platform. We actually ended up, since I uploaded this, moving the SEL training to April with the math training, and then ELA, English Language Arts, and Spanish Language Arts will be on the May School Improvement Day. So we will be providing the PD, and we are looking to purchase all of the teacher editions now, so they have those going into the summer. If they so choose to read their teacher editions, they will have them. So our final slide then, I wanted to talk about kind of what's the work that we need to do to launch things and be ready for next year. Again, I mentioned getting the teacher editions in our teachers' hands. We are doing some Branching Minds platform training now for all staff. We've had our building MTSS teams, which is like social workers, interventionists, psychologists, and assistant principals living in Branching Minds all year. But now we want the teachers to see what that can do for them, so they will be getting that training in March. We will have a lot of work to do in the spring and the summer in regards to our standards and report cards and what we need to have ready for rubrics. So we're ready for the assessments within the new curriculum. Of course, our tech department, as Mr. Kosick knows, will have a heavy lift on integration, but we were really nice in making sure we landed on a curriculum and assessment in the same vendor. We didn't plan that, Dan, but we got lucky. And then the last piece is just thinking about like our resource organization and distribution. We have a big move to make this summer, so we got a lot of organizing to do to get the ball all ready to go for next fall. So that is a ton of information, but I welcome any questions.
I just before I'm going to turn it over to the board. I just want to thank the team, Lisa, Katie. This is a very, very complex process. There's a huge human element to it. you're looking at 33 people trying to make a decision on behalf of 200, looking at rubrics and having vendors and discussion and really, really, really important decision. And I'm really just grateful for the process they ran. I knew we'd get a good outcome. If you focus on the process, you're going to get a good outcome, and we did. And I think the teacher voice and agency came through. I feel super excited about where this is going to take us, but just wanted to publicly acknowledge you, Katie and Lisa, for your leadership, as well as the other people. I always, when I do that, I forget people, but you two are the ones here right now. So I just wanted to thank you both for all the time, effort, and commitment you put into the process.
How long does it typically take to see results so that you know? Because sometimes I'm assuming it takes time to implement.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. I'm actually excited to see what happens because typically you see an implementation dip when you try something new and people are all this training and trying to figure it out. I will say we did our best to dig into the survey data and who has been using it. Wakanda was the only district we could find that has used it now for 2 years, so they actually have achievement data, and they saw amazing in 1 year. I mean, I want to say, was it like 6% increase in some of their grade levels?
I think District 300 also used it, and the individual learning platform, and saw results, really positive ones.
I think that the interesting piece will be though both of those layered because we're doing the math curriculum and the assessment with that individualized learning pathway. So both of those I think have the power to really see some change and see some improvements for sure. But I don't know how long it will take, but hopefully not long.
And then it seems to feel, maybe it's just the presentation, but some of the lessons and the learning and such is gamified. And is that different than what they're experiencing now?
So they currently do have Dreambox and Freckle so K2 is what uses Dreambox, 3-5 uses that. So they do have that gamified option. But the iReady seems more engaging when the teachers had a chance to play around with the platform. And then also there's a fluency component that's built into iReady that students are able to practice their fact fluency like in a more exciting way than just flashcards with the students, and it kind of gives them instant feedback, similar to what we saw in the video where they're able to track their progress. So a lot of the digital side has been gamified in an engaging way for our students, and that was really important for our teachers to look at.
But Dr. Stuffin, correct me if I'm wrong, you both students get an addition. So you really didn't talk about that, but the students actually get a book as well, in addition to the electronic learning.
Yeah, there's 3 key pieces when you think about like curriculum and supplemental resources. There's the curriculum, which is it's a consumable, so they can write in their books. We get them every year, and that is what is aligned to the curriculum. Then there's also the assessment where the kids at the beginning of the year will take the test at the beginning of the year, and it will individually it'll individualize. What do you need? Help fill in gaps, go wherever a student needs to go to work towards grade level, and it'll push them beyond grade level. But then there's another piece when you dig into the quotes, this is teacher toolbox. And the toolbox is where the teacher could go in and say, okay, I need an additional lesson on multiplying 2-digit numbers. And the toolbox has electronic lesson plans where you can assign. So they talked about on that parent thing where you had my path, and that was based on the assessment. But then it was, I can't remember, the other box was like my lessons or something, and that's what the teacher assigned to them. So there's 2 digital pieces the kids could be doing, the assessment connection and then the teacher assigned. And then they have their in-class book and activities that they're doing. So there's definitely a lot of resources for the teachers, but it's all connected, which I think they'll find to be really helpful. Our current curriculum is aligned to the IAR, aligned to standards, but it was at times hard for the teachers to go, okay, well, I have Freckle, but then over here I have these activities that we created as teachers, and it was harder to see the connections, whereas now everything in the teacher's manual will say, oh, you want more here, go there. So it just really helps put it together for them that I think will be helpful.
Okay, and as Dr. Steffen mentioned, this was on the Finance Committee agenda. And again, as she spoke to some of the questions regarding secondary in regards to math, that'll be reviewed next year. Because again, just trying to keep that continuity through the district as a unit district. So that will be reviewed. And then we had asked, we had like 4 different contracts. Like, why do we have so many? Why is it not one complete comprehensive contract? But as she mentioned, through Pam's, Dr. Kimmett's negotiations, doing it this way, brought it down $15,000, and they got 2 additional professional development days. And then, as it talks about in the memo, we will transition out of NWEA, and that contract, making sure that that's a clean break, there's no cost, and there isn't. That contract will just expire, and then if the board approves, we move to iReady. And that's that. Though, I do have a question for administration, because it is on the agenda, but it doesn't show a recommended action. Are we wanting to make action on this today?
Yes.
Okay, the agenda does not reflect that.
Well, it does have a request.
You just updated it right now?
It said recommendation, administration respectfully recommends, but I don't know if you had a.
It doesn't show as a motion, though.
Exactly.
Updated, I'm told, so let me refresh.
Hold, please.
Yes, hold, please. And there it is. All right. All right, I need a motion to approve entering into a contract with Curriculum Associates for the iReady Math and Reading K-8 Assessment Suite and the adoption of the iReady Classroom Mathematics in the amount of $296,503.64 out of district funds.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mr. DeVera. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, next up is the 2023 Property Tax Relief Grant PRTG Bond Abatement.
So as we've previously mentioned, last year, the Board of Education was awarded the Property Tax Relief Grant Bond Abatement through Illinois State Board of Education. These funds do figure into our base and minimum funding. On our evidence-based funding, there is a requirement of this grant that we do abate 2 consecutive years of these funds. The abatement amount is $4,247,016. We will be abating out of Fund 30. When those funds are received, they will be deposited into Fund 30. As in the past, these funds do come within this fiscal year. So that it would be the recommendation of the administration this evening.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
No additional questions, but again, as Dr. Kibbins mentioned, we spoke on this earlier, and again, this was discussed at the Finance Committee. And so with that, I will move for a motion to approve the 2023 Property Tax Relief Grant Abatement in the amount of $4,247,016.00 in Fund 30 Debt Service, and directly deposit the abated funds into Fund 30 Debt Service upon receipt. This is 2 of 2 required abatements.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Francisco, seconded by Ms. Klingler. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Motion carries. And that brings us to positive occurrences. Take it away. I got a whole list, but I'll let you guys pick it off.
Well, Dr. Mendoza kind of stole mine, but Buddy Ballers was awesome. And I have to say that I kept hearing things from the school where I work, and several faculty members came to it, and they were all really impressed. They were impressed with our band, they were impressed with our cheerleaders, they were impressed with our panther that was running around and cheering all the kids on, and they just thought it was awesome. And apparently we are the bee's knees, so I'm just letting you know.
Or the Panthers' paws.
Al mentioned this past week, Mr. Jewett, Mrs. Klingler, and I attended a conference for COSBA for the Consortium of State School Board Associations, having attended the inaugural conference and then now their second annual conference. They continue to grow and to get better, but this was a really good conference, really good general sessions, just a lot happening. It was really good, and the venue was great too.
So I missed last meeting, so that this may have been mentioned, so I apologize. But I had the opportunity to go to the variety show, and one of the kids that was highlighted here was one of the MCs of that show, and it was just such a good show. The kids are so talented. He actually sang twice. He was amazing. I mean, really amazing, professionally good. But all of the kids really did such a good job, and I know there were nerves behind it, but they really represented our school so beautifully. So I really wanted to highlight that, even though it happened a month ago, so I apologize. And then the other thing was the basketball game. We had the 8th graders join the high school. So for me personally, I got to see both of my high schooler and my middle schooler play together, which I thought was super cute. But again, they're such well-behaved kids. They're so kind. They're just beautiful souls, and they represented us again just so nicely. And then COSBA was amazing. One of the things that they did in COSBA that I thought was really, really cool was they had kids from their area come, and some of them sang, some of them danced, but the performances that they did were amazing. They actually made me emotional, just because you could see the effort they had done, especially in particular the dancers were just outstanding. So that whole conference was amazing. I look forward to kind of sharing with you guys some of the stuff, bringing back to you, but it was a really good experience.
Yeah, I'm putting in for the next COSBA based on the experience. Yeah, it was actually one of the better. I might actually say it was the best conference I've been to, school board conference so far. So I exceeded expectations.
Excellent.
And one of the ways that it did is it had this balance of, I usually bring work and I can get some of it done. And if it wasn't for having meetings, I wouldn't have been able to get any of it done because it wasn't crammed where you were done exhausted, even though I'm tired. It was well paced. The balance of both entertainment and information, and it wasn't. And so I went to a session with the security part, which I'm looking forward to exploring, bringing some of that back. But it was from a vendor that wasn't advertising anything. He just shared valuable information and from their expertise, and you weren't sold anything. It was really for the benefit of the everything felt like it was for the benefit of the participants, which was really refreshing.
All right, I'm just going to run through it. I had a great opportunity. I did get to go to Grant to see the girls basketball regional. Wasn't the result we wanted to see, but the girls did an amazing job out there, so it was great to see them. I'm always going to give you the wrestling recap. We kind of already saw it, but boys wrestling had 3 state qualifiers and 1 medalist. Will Cole placed 4th in the heavyweight classification as a junior, so congratulations, Will. Girls wrestling, we had 3 state qualifiers. In 2024, we saw for the first time we had 2 3-time state qualifiers. On the boys' side, Alejandro Cordova qualified for state for the 3rd time. And as we've talked about and seen in the past, Ireland McCain qualified for state for a third time, and she's going to be try to become the first four-time state qualifier in school history this coming year when in 24-25 with her senior year. Today started the start of the spring sports, so baseball, boys tennis, girls soccer, baseball, softball, all got rolling out there today. It was great to see everybody out there. Volleyball tryouts start on March 4th. Looking forward to seeing that. Just a reminder for everybody on your calendars, you've got All District Choir Festival on the 29th on Thursday. So bonus day, we get the Choir Festival. And then the following day on March 1st, the All District Secondary Bands. So a couple great events there. And then just to keep it on your agenda for next week, Women's History Month Readers Theater on March 6th will be a great event as well. So that's what I have on positive occurrences.
Black History Month Friday night was really, really good. I don't remember seeing the Civic Center that packed. It's got to be, I don't know, Chrissy, 8 years ago, 10 maybe at the very beginning. So I just want to thank Chrissy, Linnell Collins, the team. It was a really, really, really good event. So just wanted to call that out. It's good.
All right, then next up, let's go to future agenda items. I'll start it. For our COSMA people, I'm looking forward to those recaps. If we can try and have those in so we can talk about them on the 25th. So not the next board meeting, give you an extra one on top of that. So March 25th would be awesome. Okay, hearing no other.
Oh, I have one. I wasn't sure if you were done. Sorry. I just was following up on the last time I asked it regarding Twilight tutoring and SOAR, if that is still coming forward.
Yes, we'll have something for you at the next meeting.
All right, thank you.
And the Schuler.
That will likely be probably end of March, early April. Okay.
All right, hearing no additional future agenda items, I'm going to need a motion to convene in closed session as permitted by statute 5 ILCS 120/2. Oops, sorry, did I miss something? Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm trying to jump the gun. Sorry. Thank you. Go.
All right. I need a motion to approve the closed session meeting minutes of January 2nd, 2024 regular board meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mrs. Klingler, seconded by Mrs. Larson. Roll call, please.
Mr. De Vera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yeah.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Motion carries, and we're well past 9, so thank you for that, Mr. De Vera. Now I will ask for a motion to convene in closed session as permitted by statute 5 ILCS 120/2 for the purpose of discussing the following. Employment matters, 5 ILCS 120/2C1, real estate matters, 5 ILCS 120/2C5, and closed meeting minutes, 5 ILCS 120/2C21.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mrs. Klingler. Roll call, please.
Mr. De Vera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Klingler?
Yes.
Motion carries. That will end the open session for tonight. Thank you all for attending online. We will see you at our next full board meeting on March the 11th. Everyone have a great evening, and we will now convene closed.